Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for coming back so promptly as well. And as we always say in IDA, it's very good to network, and it's great to see people connecting and saying hello to each other. We're about to kick off with the second session for this morning. I'm delighted to welcome Frances Mitchell, who is the Director for Innovation at Teleflex for Innovation Strategy and indeed Insights. And what Frances is going to do here actually is, Frances is going to do a fairly active session with you at the moment in terms of engagement. So I hope you're ready with your phones in terms of some of the surveys and pops that's going to come your way. And it's very open to questions and interaction as well. So with that, I just want to say thank you very much to Frances, and I'm going to hand over the stage. Thank you.
Watch me dance the night away. My heart could be burning.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here today with you all. As Michael said, I want to get you involved after your coffee break so you don't fall asleep. But I wanted to start off by kind of asking you, what does the innovation mindset even mean? And more specifically, I want you to take your phones and scan the code and give me words that you would use to describe someone with that innovation mindset. You know, do you know someone who would say, yeah, they have a great innovation mindset, this is what I think, these are the words that I would use for innovation mindset. So I was chatting to John Nugent just there. The nice thing about innovation, it does transcend all sectors. So this is a question for everybody. Oh, great. So we have creative, curious. Curious is like my favorite word for innovation. I think if you can be curious about things, it's where you're going. And obviously creative, hugely important. Thinking outside the box, that old good one. Adaptive, open-minded, entrepreneurial. This is great. I'm going to leave this up because I think it's really nice to see. And I think, you know, my next question to you is, who here would say that these words resonate with them, that describe them as a person, that there's words on this screen that describe them? Put up your hand if you would say that these are words that would describe, even some of the words that would describe you. And there's always a fun thing, will I put up my hand? And I know that Michael said, if people put up their hand, it's most likely the frontline salespeople, because they're like, yeah, this is me. This is who I am. But I want to say that, you know, I used to teach innovation to PhD students out in UCD years ago, and I used to start my sessions with them going, who here is creative? And maybe 3 people would put up their hands. I'm like, come on, you're PhD students. But by the end of the day, I'd have people, you know, relaxing into it and saying, okay, it's okay to say that. And I think the important thing to note about innovation is it's not just for the frontline people. It's not just for the super smart PhDs or whatever. It's for everybody. It's for the back staff. It's for, you know, I worked in Procter & Gamble, and some of the most amazing work came out of supply chain, you know, because you just want to be thinking differently about how you're doing, what you're doing, and, you know, be curious and ask those questions. So anyway, back to that question of what is the innovation mindset? Luckily, there are some smart people who've been working on this already. So this framework here is part of the ISO 56000 set of standards in innovation management. And there's a new development in the area on competencies for innovation management. So it's a work in progress. You know, it's early stage, but believe it or not, this is actually being led out of Ireland. And so you can see here that there's lots of different words. They've kind of bucketed it out in different areas. But there's a lot of crossover between what you've put here and what's on the competency framework. There's lots of really good words there. I mean, I know, don't worry, I'm not everything in that either. But the good thing about innovation is that it's about teamwork and skills. So even if you look at subject matter competencies, I'm not a technical and functional expert in all of the different clinical areas I've been working in Teleflex. Like, I've worked in benign prostate hyperplasia, tracheostomy, critical care, trauma. I haven't a clue about any of those when I'm going into them, but the purpose of going into them is to be curious and understand where the opportunities might lie. And what it is as well is about bringing together the right teams of people to work on these different things. So if you're building your innovation teams and want to have a really great innovation mindset in what you're doing, you'd want to have all of this stuff going on. But what I think is even more interesting is the purpose of these skills and competencies, because it's all fine and good having a list of words up on a slide, but what does it really mean? And so this also comes up in the standards, where They talk about, enabling individuals to design, implement, and manage innovation, things like that. But, it's also important that it's grounded in relevant expertise and context. If you're a company and you're looking at a new thing to do, of course you're interested in the market size, you're interested in my industry in the clinical opportunity, in any other industry the actual, person-rated or specific, because I think of energy, I don't know how to say it in that context, but there's an opportunity there, there's technical opportunity. But are you going to do something where you have zero skills in that area? Maybe, maybe not. So these are the questions you need to ask. But it's also really important that it is aligned to the strategic direction of the organization. If top down, this is not what they want to do, there's no point. You're never going to get the support in doing it. It could be something amazing, but it's not going to happen for you. It doesn't make sense for you. It makes sense for somebody else. So these are, innovation is messy and complex. I often kind of describe my job as working with kind of vast cross-disciplinary multinational teams where English is their first language and I'm helping them to understand each other. Because they don't understand each other often, because they're coming from different backgrounds. I've got finance, regulatory, reimbursement, engineering, marketing, business, leadership. All of these different people have different perspectives and views on what any particular opportunity might be. And on a really cool project I've been working on in the last kind of year, in the first 5 months, we pivoted our strategy 3 times. And I think because we've just finished a big kind of qual-quant study and a cadaver study, we're probably going to pivot a bit again. And not because we were wrong, but it's because with more insight becomes more refinement of strategy. And in a regulated industry like mine, the words really do matter in terms of how you articulate what it is you're going after. So this is a huge area. And we probably don't have as much time as we want to go into those specifics of the kind of skills framework. But you have a legend in your own living room, that is Chantel and her team, who know an awful lot about this kind of stuff. So if you do want to know more, you can always knock on her shoulder, sorry Chantel, and try not to give you too much work. You can just say, go look there. But also, I said this was being led out of Ireland. So there's a guy called Charlie Tuxworth who's involved in a group called Innovate Ireland, which is an all-island group of innovation professionals. And he's one of the leaders on that, and he's actually leading the ISO development of this standard. He's doing the vast majority of the work, and so he's a great guy. And actually, I know that he's in the background developing a micro-learning kind of platform to help companies deliver on these skills as and when they're needed. But why is the innovation mindset so important? Well, I think you know these things, the 4 Ds. There's lots of forces at work out there that are destabilizing us and making us reconsider how we are going to do what we do on a regular basis. But also, it matters to your clients. So these are the kind of, different sectors that you've got that you cover with the IDA. And arguably, innovation, it matters across the board. It matters for everybody. But what does that mean, even interested in innovation? Well, I guess there's no better time to move on to dun, 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 AI. Someone has to talk about it, and we may as well, but please note that just because I'm talking about it does not mean that I believe it is the only instrument for innovation. But we may as well say something about it. So there's clear opportunity for AI to deliver positively for humanity, but you can see a lot from looking back. So many people are predicting a crash, or a level setting at least plays out from history. So if you look in the past, there have been booms, but there also have been AI winters. And in those cases, it's because the investment did not lead to the return that it was looking for. So in the case of companies that are here in Ireland today, those that leverage AI in the right way are those that are going to be the sticky companies for Ireland. Those who embrace a true innovation mindset can build value based on real needs, not just because they're making something just because they can, And I'd like you to think about that in relation to your clients across all industries. There are many that are leveraging AI in targeted ways that are going to reap the rewards from it, but there are others who are not. And how can we help them to innovate in a sustainable, long-term way to ensure that they're successful and, more importantly, that they remain here? And I know that some businesses will rail against regulation, and there was very interesting discussion earlier on about that question of regulation and deregulation. But sometimes regulation can be that driver of innovation. And it forces businesses to look at things from a not purely financial point of view, which is important. And it's the job of governments and agencies to encourage businesses, but in that responsible way. And I would argue that the EU AI Act has the potential to support the growth of long-term sticky innovation, forcing companies to think differently about what they're trying to achieve. But on that question of regulation, because it was so interesting, the discussion earlier, I'm not saying that all, I'm still agreeing with Minister Chambers on the fact that you need to relook at regulation. So for any of you in the med device industry, you know the impact of MDR, for instance, in the EU, which arguably shifted the focus of all medtech startups from launching in Europe to launching in America, strangling the innovation pipeline for Europe around medical devices. It also had the knock-on effect of, I know companies that removed pediatric devices from the European market because of the regulation. So that's those teeny tiny babies no longer having the devices that they need in Europe. But if you're in America, you could have them. And so that was the impact of that regulation. And so thinking about regulation and the importance of it, because it is important, it's about understanding systemically how that impacts the different things that are going on. You know, the butterfly in the Amazon having an impact somewhere else. It really does matter. So getting the balance right is important, but at the same time, I'm also a big fan of creativity within constraints, because I do believe it creates better results. Because by putting some of those constraints around it, it's not a purely financially driven decision that you're going forward with your innovation. You're considering the bigger impact of what it is that you're doing. And in my opinion, that is how you make more longevity in your business. You're thinking more holistically about what it is that you want to achieve. So anyway, there's clearly a lot of potential for AI. And one way of looking at how to support your clients is in partnership with the ecosystem that exists here in Ireland. So Deciphex is a relatively small Irish company that was created to revolutionize pathology by leveraging AI. And because they're a smart bunch of people, and they were working with another smart bunch of people in Novartis, also in Dublin, they realized that Deciphex could create a whole new channel of business, a whole new revenue stream, that would also double as supporting Novartis themselves in accelerating drug development. So it's a huge win-win. And it's by partnering on those different skills and bringing it together that they were able to do things differently. So that's back to that question of teamwork. Not one person is the innovator. No one person can take an idea and bring it to market. It's always going to be a mixture of people involved. But there's also a risk of not keeping an eye on innovation and leveraging the new technologies that are out there. Take the case of overactive bladder. Now, I know Michael's like, don't talk too much about medical, but I'm trying to bring it home. It's still my industry. So if you look at overactive bladder or urinary incontinence, right, 16% of the Irish population over the age of 40 most likely has it. And that's male and female. So statistically speaking, there's a lot of people in this room who suffer from a level of overactive bladder. There's 78 million women in the US who suffer from it, and the global market size is 4.2 billion. So it's a problem, but it's clearly also a market opportunity. So how are people being treated in that area? So overactive bladder is generally, in the first instance, treated via behavioral and lifestyle changes. If that doesn't work, you're on drugs. If that doesn't work, there's a physical intervention that happens. And those physical interventions can be things like sacral modulators. Sacral modulators are made in Galway by Medtronic. There's also the use of Botox. And Botox is made in Westport by Allergan. So far, so good. These guys are meeting a need. However, there's also an Irish startup called Amara Therapeutics, who is leveraging digital technologies to scale a hugely effective and proven cognitive behavioral therapy approach to fixing the symptoms of overactive bladder. So, think about it. They're leveraging digital technology to quite literally help you rewire your brain to have a physiological impact on your body. It's kind of amazing, right? And so, who wouldn't prefer a non-pharmaceutical, non-intervention solution to a health problem that you have? Right? So what does that mean for our big clients, the companies here in Ireland? If they're not part of the journey, they're missing out, and they're going to lose market share. We need to support them so this doesn't happen. Obviously, this is like a small snapshot of what partnership can mean in Ireland, but partnership is a fast way to help companies gain the competencies that they need to deliver on that innovation. And there's a multitude of ways of making that happen here in Ireland, be that university partnerships, partnerships with business, leveraging the state research grants, things like that. There are many modes of interaction and collaboration, and getting the right people in the room just to have a chat is a really good start. And if there's anything we're really good at here in Ireland, it's having the chats. So, what does this mean for me? Well, to round things up, I'm going to go on a seemingly random tangent, but I promise you it makes sense. So, I've recently become hugely interested in the writings of a man called Magan, who you should definitely check out. He gives this amazing view of the Irish language and how complex and beautiful it is. One word that he had in the book really resonated with me. Does anyone know this word? Dinshankus. Love suus, if you know it. No, okay. If you look it up in the dictionary, it means topography. Okay? But Magan himself would dispute this as reductive and not enough, because in the Irish language, things are rarely as they seem. There are layers of meaning, often historic and sometimes mythological, that go beyond a mere transactional A plus B equals C description. In reality, Dinshankus means place plus history, place plus meaning, place plus story. And this Dinshankus is what you guys are doing when you're going out and selling Ireland as a place to do business. But if you flip it on its head and you think about it, Ireland is a place where words have layers of meaning. And just like in commercial innovation, nothing is as it seems. So it requires debate and discussion across multidisciplinary teams to illustrate how one simple word can mean different things to different people. It is rooted in our being, who we are and how we see the world. Untangling all of that to create new and meaningful value is what we want people to do and what we at a nation are really good at. So I want you to go and take time and enrich your mind and soul with all things creative and different. Read books, go to concerts, go to shows, make something. There's inspiration to be found in everything. But remember that this little island country that we belong to, the people have the hard wiring, the skills and the capabilities to drive innovation and make the world a better place. So thank you very much. I have some time for questions. John is straight up there. We have a microphone that can go around if you want to put up your hand. But John was straight in because he mentioned it before. If I could remove one obstacle or barrier to innovation, what would you choose or suggest? People. They're the worst. But people are also the best. But it is that complexity of people that makes it hard, actually. And it's that hard question of, sometimes I've encountered, say, politics. I'm coming in to support a team, and they're like, yeah, but you just want the glory. I'm like, no, I don't. I want actually to make something that gets in the hand of a doctor and saves life, But the complexity of people is what makes the rich innovation happen. So it's that kind of balance that you have to achieve with the people on that. But also what's very important is that leadership have a clear vision of what they want to achieve. So if you're doing commercial innovation, you want to make sure that you understand it. Back in the days when I was working in Procter & Gamble, it was always very clear, this is what we're going to achieve, this is how it's broken down in each sector, this is what we want to do. So then it made it easier for the teams to innovate because they knew the boundaries. Again, it comes back to that creativity within constraints. Nobody can just do anything. Nobody has an infinite budget. So how do you help, people to deliver into what that organization genuinely wants to do? If that makes sense. If there's somebody who wants to ask a question, please do, but I'll go with the screen while it's here. So Chantal, because I know Chantal. We have great success in driving R&D across our clients. What more could we do to drive innovation? And thanks for the shout out. Chantal, you're a legend. So Great success in driving R&D. How can we do more to drive innovation? So this is something that's come up at previous talks I've been given and discussions I've had across industry. When you look at, in large corporates, how decisions are made in terms of investment for R&D, often it's coming from strategic marketing. So who's making the decisions on where the portfolio is going to go, right? My job is really weird that it's in Ireland, but I was cheeky because I applied in the pandemic for a remote role in North Carolina and said, remote Dublin. But most of these roles are not in Ireland, but they could be, because we've got immense talent in that area. And so when you're looking at marketing, marketing is upstream and downstream. Downstream is the immediacy of advertising, digital media, all that kind of stuff. Upstream is understanding your markets, understanding the opportunities, building out the pipelines of opportunity, and prioritizing those pipelines. And the better you are at delivering the arguments as to why your particular area is more important than this team over here, the more likely you are to get funding. You're still pitching for funding in a multinational as you would as a startup. It's just slightly different. So can we get more of that here is something that myself and a good few people would be very, very much interested in, because we've grounded ourselves from manufacturing bases, and then we've moved manufacturing up to R&D. We've gone up the value chain. Logically, the next step of going up that value chain is into strategic marketing and strategy. So how can we get that more happening here? And arguably it can. I don't see why it cannot. And companies do. Stryker do. They have an amazing innovation centre. BD do as well. Lots of companies do, because you're trying to understand people. That's the root of it. You're trying to understand the people who consume your products. And we're good at understanding people, so I would say that. How do I influence an innovative agenda in Teleflex beyond R&D? I'm not even in R&D. I'm in a corporate magic role where I'm stuck between many people. So a lot of what I do is packaging a story of opportunity in a different way for corporate leadership versus business unit leadership versus the R&D teams, marketing teams, and the people on the ground. Again, it comes back to language. So I'm repositioning, re-articulating the opportunity, because at the top, what they want is margin, market size, scalability. You know, that's what they're looking for. The other people here are like, you know, the clinical need, clinical need, clinical need, clinical need. And so you're doing all of that work to influence innovation and telling the story that resonates with that person so that you remove the blockers to take it forward. Nobody wants to talk to me. Fine, I'll go back to the iPad. Ideas come from individuals but are often developed and implemented by teams. How can we encourage innovative thinking by individuals within a team framework? There's a lot to be said for psychological safety on that one, right? You want people to be able to say the crazy bonkers ideas. And I used to always teach this back in the day, because you want someone to come out with the fact that Daleks could deliver your medicine via underground networks of moles. I don't know. I made that up clearly right now. But the weird stuff can trigger thinking in the team to think differently about how they are looking at what they're doing. Because you want people to fundly, like, how do we differently understand our skills and capabilities to deliver on this? So there's lots of different ways you can encourage those individual voices, but really it's about giving the teams the safe space to be able to say what they think. You know, no disparagement, no bad ideas. Doesn't mean your idea is going to happen. And actually, a lot of what I've been doing with, like, one team, they had so much opportunity of what they could do, and everyone had their favorite ideas. So all I had to do was put together a framework of, you know, let's rank these ideas against each other. Market size, clinical opportunity, impacts in the, you know, you would put down these things and you would rank them. And you're like, okay, everyone agrees on the ranking. We can even weight it if you want to. And all of a sudden, the ideas are then prioritized in a data-focused way that is impersonal. It's not as personal. So I'm not saying your idea is terrible. It's just like, I love your idea. Let's put it in the matrix and see where it sits. You know, we'll eventually get to it in 2062, but, you know, we've listened to you and we've put it in. And even some of those crazy ideas still do, you know, make people think. I have 53 seconds. Okay. You've worked across multiple sectors. Have you seen great examples of cross-sectoral innovation or convergence, and what can be learned? Yeah, I mean, I've spoken about a few examples there. I mean, I used to do it in the arts. I used to love, throwing different art forms together, see what happens. I'd go to events that I think I'm going to hate just to challenge my mind. But I think that that's the thing you need to do. And I think that there's opportunity there. I was actually thinking about that the other day. You manage these sites in Ireland, and a lot of it happens already through the networks, but bringing people together from different and diverse industries to learn together and discuss together. Again, back to our amazing ability to have the chats. You learn from each other. There's amazing things to be learned from the medical device and pharma industry that have an impact in commercial, but actually commercial, fast-moving consumer goods, have this really different view on the consumer base. And how can that be then fed back in on our understanding of the people in that area as well? Like there's so much that can be learned, and I'm at 0-0, so I'll end on one point, because it comes down to your curiosity. So if you have good teams who are curious enough and have their ears open enough to listen to the fact that even though you're in energy systems and I'm in beer, there's ways and means we can understand each other and learn from each other. So that's my final point. Stay curious. Okay, thank you very much.